Hey there everyone, Rituro here with a special report for Toronto Thumbs. Now, as a smaller Canadian website, it should be no surprise that we here at Toronto Thumbs are eager and willing to support smaller local developers, people who may not be as well known as their AAA counterparts, but are just as passionate about playing and creating games, whether it's their first major entry or a labor of love. Today, I am thrilled to be interviewing someone from my backyard, the game director of TinyMob Games, located right here in Victoria, British Columbia, Jamie Toghill. Jamie, how's it going today?
It's great to be here, and we're live from I guess Canada's Hawaii, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness, I feel sorry every time I see our weather and the weather out east, but I won't rag on Toronto too much. They do keep me writing for them, so I'll be nice. So, Jamie, I'll explain your background here for the people who are watching here. You have 50-plus games, 18 years of experience, including some games I am very familiar with. FIFA, the football series, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and XCOM, one of my favorite games of all time. Jamie, tell me a little bit about your history with some of these great games.
Yeah, so I started back in 1995. I grew up in a very small village in the southwest of England called Chipping Sodbury.
Very English name, very English.
It is a very English name. The bizarrest thing was, in this very small village in the middle of nowhere, was the European headquarters for Microprose, which at the time was a massive publisher in the games industry. And they were doing all the simulation software like F-117A Stealth Fighter. They did Gunship, a whole bunch of different gunship games. And they did the XCOM games. They did the Formula One games as well that some of you guys might be familiar with, yep, by Jeff Crammond. And we did Transport Tycoon by Chris Sawyer that went on to do the Roller Coaster Tycoon game. Mm-hmm. So while I was there, I was pretty much in QA. The nice thing back in those days, though, was that QA kind of over the years has become a very centralized role in the games industry. So you pretty much got told to test the game and that's it, especially in these big companies. When I was at Microprose, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted to do as long as you had the kind of the chops to go off and do it. So, for example, you may be writing a manual because nobody else is there to write the manual. You may be writing the README file, which some of you guys might remember what a README file is on a disk.
I
remember. Other things like you'd get to work on the offsite at all these great developers that Microprose was working with. And one of those guys was Mythos Games, and those are the guys that did the XCOM. They did 3 of the XCOM games. They did the XCOM Enemy Unknown. They did Terror from the Deep, which I worked on the PlayStation version of that as well. And they also did XCOM Apocalypse. That was the last, I think, the game that they actually did. And that was by Julian Gollop, who was basically the creator of that franchise. And it's kind of that game and how Julian was building the world around it. There's a lot of inspiration that kind of, throughout my career, I've started to build out kind of these kind of virtual worlds and kind of the characters and everything else is pretty much down to some of these early experiences on some of these games. So I've kind of done a whole gamut of different things throughout my career. And then going into Gamehouse, where I kind of joined Victoria, I came over to the island speaking to Alex Mendeleev, who's our CEO here at TinyMob Games. He was the general manager at Gamehouse. And we spent 20 minutes talking basically about the kind of games that we love, the kind of games that we would love to make, where the mobile space is going, where the social space is going. And it was a kind of a great 20-minute chat. It was a no-brainer to me. It was a chance for me to kind of potentially come over and make games that you can't make unless you have a certain amount of money to be able to kind of move them forward. And so we kind of sat down, and as the kind of the overall company kind of culture shifted and the product direction shifted, Alex and I continued to talk about the kind of games that we love to play. And Chris Hofkin, who's our CTO, kind of often joined in those conversations. And we had a very, very close synergy with the kind of games that we love, which is like the Command and Conquer games. It's all the RTS stuff, StarCraft, it's Warcraft, the original stuff. I'm a sucker for the old games, and I just always love to pick up those kind of games and play them back, and kind of it's where game mechanics were so well implemented because that was what was going to sell the product.
And no better example of that was from your time at Microprose, where you look at some of the classics that you mentioned, Transport Tycoon, XCOM. Those are games that they're remembered so fondly for the way, not so much how they looked, but how they played.
Yeah, and the interesting thing there is that Transport Tycoon was one guy that developed that game. He had a small amount of support on the side, but essentially one game wrote the engine, and that was Chris Sawyer out of his house. And it goes to show that if you have a passion and a want and a desire to make these kind of games, you don't need a heck of a lot of money and a heck of a lot of resources to potentially do it. And I think that's the kind of the key thing for what we've seen in Victoria over the last 12 months is there's a lot of small studios growing. There's a lot of smaller independent developers kind of coming out and starting to make games. And there's a great community here as well. Unlike other cities that I've worked in, other companies where things are very guarded, in Victoria it's very, very different. Like everyone here in all the different companies, DJ Arts, Kano Apps, some of the great guys here, we all collaborate together. We all kind of meet up. We talk about the kind of games we're making, some of the kind of hurdles we're trying to kind of jump over, and we kind of work together. And I think that's one of the things that's helping the community grow here is there is that kind of openness.
Well, let's talk about the game that you're working on right now with TinyMob Games. It took a while for you to actually release the name, but it is called Tiny Realms. We're going to show you right now the launch trailer for Tiny Realms.
Ancient gods once protected this world. Immortals, known as summoners, nurtured the mortal races, sharing the harvest of the realm. A great war broke out, but just as the forces of good were to be victorious, darkness played its final hand. Facing defeat, the Dark Army pierced the core of the planet. The mortals quarreled, and fearful of each other's intentions, forged great armies. Their lust for power and continued aggression would bring the realm to the brink of war.
All right, there it is, Tiny Realms. My first impression, Jamie, it looks like you're trying to make a better Clash of Clans. Is that accurate?
No, I think what we've tried to do is create a game that goes back to the games that we love to play. And there is kind of some synergies with some of the stuff from Clash of Clans, but Command and Conquer, StarCraft, the Warcraft games, what we weren't seeing in the kind of a whole bunch of games that were coming out like Clash of Clans was that there was no real sense of control for the player. So there's a certain burnout point I find for me as a person, as a gamer, is I want a bit more. I want to be able to get in there and I want to be able to control my units. I want to be able to kind of figure out strategies. And granted, there's lots of other strategies by simply deploying units like these other games have. But it was going back to how can we make a game that feels more like the Command and Conquer experience where I'm that guy on the battlefield. I'm the battle commander. And the other games right now, like they aren't doing that. And that was kind of for me was why aren't they doing that? There's a whole market there, a whole audience there that want this kind of game. But we also wanted to cater for the casual gamers as well. So if you do want to just be able to deploy your units into the battlefield, you can do that. But if you want to have some very light control, so you don't want the full kind of Command and Conquer experience, you literally want to just be able to click on a building. Press on a set of units, press on a building as a target. They'll simply do those kind of commands as well. But if you want the full control, where you want to be able to kind of draw out lines, literally with your finger on the screen, is draw out the lines of how you want your units to move towards the targets, how you want them to avoid defenses. We have that whole element there, so you can have that kind of like sneak and pray kind of attack mechanisms in the game as well. And those are the things that I think kind of differentiate us big time from a lot of the other games out there. The other thing is we wanted to create a story around the game. We didn't want to just kind of create a very small, simple narrative. We wanted to kind of expand out where this was a massive story that we wanted to tell over a longer period of time. So the initial launch of Tiny Realms is essentially the first of 3 major chapters. Okay. So the Realm of Light is our first chapter, and you kind of see that in the intro sequence.
It's with the globe splitting in half there, yeah.
Yeah, and what's really interesting with that was you get to see other parts of the future chapters in there. So if you do take a look at it and you see a few scenes you'll notice that they won't appear in the current game when we launch it, but it will start to appear over time. Like for example, the very first scene is our sacred ground of where the gods of the world came in, and it obviously says that in the intro sequence in the trailer. That's going to be a key part to the finale of kind of like the chapters, and obviously in between of these three big kind of story arcs, we'll also have a lot of updates, a lot of new gameplay mechanics going in. There is a very, very strong focus on the single player experience, but also we want to make sure that we're catering for that PvP experience that people love to play as well, especially with the RTS games. It's very, very important that we support that. And I don't want to kind of give too much away right now, but there's things that we're doing where they both merge together, which I think will make it a very, very compelling experience for people as well. I can also give you an exclusive as well.
Oh, okay.
So, it's one of the things that we did when we came up with the story is if you see the world split in two, originally the game was actually going to be a sci-fi game. When we started to come up with the ideas, the planet early on, it was called Dark Sphere. The idea was that the planet had no longer was spinning on its axis. So there was one half in perpetual darkness and one in perpetual light. And the world wasn't necessarily completely broken in two. It was more like it was scarred with a big canyon, a vast canyon around it. So we had the story, the base of the story kind of laid out very, very early, and then we started to build upon that over time. And essentially, we all worked together to kind of, I guess, make a very cohesive kind of story around the Tiny Realms universe.
Now, with a title like this, Jamie, you're talking about having a deep backstory, having that control. This seems like it would be a perfect type of game to put on a PC. Why did you go with the mobile platform?
The mobile platform is so accessible for everyone these days. I think you're going to see a shift where everyone, in the next few years, you're going to see a massive shift across the world. Everyone's having a smartphone. Everyone's going to be more connected. And people want that bite-sized game. People in this kind of day and age, they don't necessarily have the time that when I was growing up, you sat in front of a PC for 6 to 10 hours, 24 hours in the evening and played your kind of solitary game experience. Now people want to connect. They want to play together. They want to play while they're waiting for the bus. They want to play while they're on the train. They want to play while they're in the shop, waiting to kind of pay for their goods. People just want to connect when they want to kind of interact. And I think the mobile platform was great for that. We wanted to create a bite-sized experience. So the Tiny Realms is kind of, it plays on itself in the sense that we wanted a bite-sized experience you could have within 2 to 5 minutes. But at the same time, it's a massive kind of world as you start to uncover it. There's so many layers of depth you can peel away.
Now, that said, I mean, while there is certainly an argument to be made for accessing the more casual market and certainly the more connected market through mobile, have you considered the possibility of doing Tiny Realms 2 on a more terrestrial platform, be it a console, be it a PC?
Not right now. I think the Tiny Realms 2 is an interesting one because we've always perceived this product as having a very kind of long expansion to it, that we're going to constantly build upon that experience. Like I mentioned, those 3 chapters are very important to us. The story is very tight. And of course, the other platforms are out there. Like Android is a great platform as well. I think we're very interested in that platform. But right now we're focused on the iOS. But again, there's so many other platforms and providers on those platforms for the PC that it might make it a great step in the future to put it on PC.
Excellent. Jamie, thank you so much for talking with us today. Can you give us the release details for Tiny Realms?
Sure. So Tiny Realms, we are going to be launching kind of in spring this year. So we're literally around the corner from getting the game done.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. Jamie Toghill from TinyMob Games, located right in my backyard in Victoria, BC. Thank you, Jamie.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. This has been a report for Toronto Thumbs with Rituro. Thanks for watching.